Hi, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time and space today to share your projects. I'm personally inspired by your work and grateful for your efforts to make it happen. By way of introduction, my name is Liz Barry. I'm a longtime member of Public Lab, and it's my honor to be the moderator here today. For context, this event is being recorded. It's part of Public Lab's ongoing review and renewal of the core topics in community science, which you can read more about on publiclab.org/reviews. So we spend most of the year reviewing the state of environmental monitoring in air, water, and soil so that the most current methods are always easily accessible for people looking to get started. And then finally, once a year, we turn our attention to techniques for organizing and advocacy. And that brings us our topic today, which is mapping for organizing. To us, this theme is an invitation to explore how participatory spatial notation, which could include a wide range of processes from community walking tours, community rolling tours, to mental mapping, aerial imaging, digital mapping, and how these techniques enable a community to combine their traditional and local knowledge as well as their empirical observations of the world in order to build stronger social bonds, develop shared problem definitions, and also shared visions. This is what translates to political power. We're going to be recording this session so that what you share becomes a resource for other people who are trying to get started on their own place-based research for advocacy. So here in this room today, there are people from incredible expansive projects, each of which has enough content that they could have a whole semester dedicated to them. But here we're switching up the usual presentation format. Instead, we're going to go in rounds answering the same series of prompts so that we can see our work on the same register. Those prompts are: share a surprising anecdote to bring the listener right into the essence of your work. So panelists, this will be your first question, and please do share a bit of your own self-introduction at that time, how it is you came to be working in this situation that you're telling the anecdote of. The panelists have already received the rest of the questions, so I will just give an overview that with 5 panelists and 5 questions, we're looking for answers on the shorter side, just a couple of minutes. And I'm going to set a speaker order of Emma, then Mookie, then Jen, then Mo, and then Sean, and I'll put that in the chat. That's the order we'll do for each question. And so again, let me repeat the first anecdote and first prompt and invite Emma to respond. Emma, could you please share a surprising anecdote that brings the listener right into the essence of your work? Thank you.
A surprising anecdote. That's kind of funny. Well, one of the major challenges I had, I was over the Buy My Home campaign for Marathon Petroleum Corporation. We had a massive tar sands oil refinery within less than 200 feet of some homes. And it has been causing illness, the inability to enjoy our homes, just a horrific situation. But the bottom line is the refinery did a $2 billion upgrade about 10 years ago and purchased some homes. But they purchased the homes on the side of the refinery that was predominantly white. And on our side, we're still stuck in the same emissions, or worse. They would refuse to buy our homes. So I started the Buy My Home campaign. And for 6 years, I tried to get them to meet with us so that we could explain why you need to extend that buyout and bring us into that and get us out of this situation. I said, this is environmental racism and we need to do something about it. So long story short, after 6 years of them just denying and saying we're not going to do anything, I took a busload of people to their shareholders meeting. And I was the only one who went inside while they all protested outside. But I said, as I sat in this room, with all these corporate people. This is their board of directors. It was just, it was capitalism on steroids. Blue suits, gray suits, 99% white men, older, millionaires. And I said, how can I make a connection? How am I going to get them? Because the basic problem is they don't humanize us. We're not human to them. This is why they can pollute like this and continue to kill us, because we're Black. So how do I humanize myself? To catch their attention, to have them listen to what I said. I said, I looked at them and pretty much summed up, they really believe in education. They want their kids to go to really great schools. So I used my daughter as an example of the kind of person I am. Who is Emma? So I raised this amazing daughter. We lived in a community with horrible schools, but I was able to, manipulate that and get around it. And she ended up attending Harvard University and graduating. So I knew they would love that, right? Whoa, she attended Harvard. And then I said, yeah. And then she decided to start a nonprofit to help other young Black people who did not have access to a good education, to help them get into a good employment situation. So she went to Yale and got her MBA. And so she combined those degrees, and now she runs a very successful nonprofit in Tennessee. And I'm very proud of her because she's changing lives. And so after that, the chairman, I said all this on the mic, open mic session. The chairman, and I said, but I need a meeting. I need a meeting with you people so you can understand what's happening to us in the community. So this the meeting shut down. The chairman of the corporation came over to me and shook my hand, and he introduced himself. He said, are you represented by attorney? No. Okay, well, good. Let's just talk. We're going to meet. And then he goes, by the way, do you think your daughter might want to work for us? I was like, no, she doesn't want to work at fossil fuels. But I just thought that was just so weird. But long story short, after that, we had, 2 years of meetings and negotiations. And on December of last year, they agreed to purchase 399 homes. And so that we could be out of there too. So, yeah.
Thank you, Emma. And next I'd like to invite Mookie.
So my anecdote is going quite way back in some of the early participatory mapping activities that I was doing, of bringing maps to different communities and then saying, what's the problem that we want to address? And during these sessions, we usually used information that was already available. A lot of environmental information is available from authorities, from transport to air quality to noise to whatever. And one of the things that happened in this workshop was that one of the community members was looking at the information and said, this is not community information in a community language. And that sentence from 20 years ago is stuck in my head, and it keeps on kind of directing things. And what was fascinating, that there was, in the same workshop, so very close by, I'm mixing things a bit, but someone was looking at the information from the transport and said, but that is actually wrong. It's showing the bus station not where it is. It's not showing the right things on the information. So even the official information is not in the right place. And although some of the people then never touched a mouse or a computer before, they said, okay, how can I change this information? How can I turn it into something that I actually influence? And that was demonstrating that, anyone, regardless of their literacy, can do things and can start contributing information and use their local knowledge. That's something that drive works that I'm continue to do.
Great, thank you, Mookie. And now Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Castro. I'm here in Chachagwe, or Montreal, Canada. I work with digital democracy. I'm part of the programs team working directly with communities who do different types of land-based project and data management and collection. And I guess the story is really like my background is in being educated in North America and Canada. where maps were like lines and boundaries and boxes and things to be obeyed and official from governments and whoever else funded those map creation. And I'm really like thrilled that I'm able to learn that maps are really can be, and as Mookie really highlighted, like community driven, owned and directed without the need for so much, I guess, ambition and objectives from different kinds of authorities. And so I'm really happy to be working with Digital Democracy that's been doing participatory mapping, using pen and paper for a while, and has now been developing software to help facilitate doing participatory mapping, digitizing it and having it be completely functional offline and really easy to use for lots of community folks around the world right now. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Jen. And to Mo, please.
Yeah, hi. So just a quick background. My name is Mo and I'm from London. And the project I'm going to talk today is actually in Nottingham, which is a city in the centre in the Midlands of the UK. And a project I did there called Mapping Greenness, which was mapping urban green spaces in the city with over 70 young people. And that was really to highlight the relationship between access to green space and mental health and well-being, and to also bring in the arts and reimagining how the city could look and combining arts and sciences in that way. So yeah, my surprising anecdote, I was thinking about the way that I was taught to study environmental science at university and the way that that evidence-based research or form of science was structured in a very sort of formal way. And what I loved about doing this community science project is that the unexpected things that happen along the way of the project become part of the process and the research itself. So one day we were in a park doing a mapping with loads of young people, and a lady came up to me saying that she'd illustrated us all, and she had 4 of these huge, beautiful drawings that they looked like a kind of storybook with these big pink balloons, which I don't know if any of you have seen Public Labs, balloon mapping kits that we were using. And so, yeah, we were able to buy them off her and feature in a public exhibition in a gallery. And yeah, that was a really lovely, unexpected outcome or surprising anecdote that then became part of the project.
Great, thank you, Mo. And to Sean, please.
Yeah, so a number of my thoughts have been brought up by some of the previous statements that were made. Emma brought up access to education, and the work that Jen brought up as well is how do you democratize access to the capabilities, and the technology has been such a key thing in the work that I've done with organizations all over. I think those are really key elements to it. Is, I truly believe maps are commonplace. Digital maps now are commonplace as well. Everybody has an expectation of a map, but often the technology that's used to support it is kind of seen as voodoo or black boxy and unable to kind of like be understood, and you need these special skills in order to do it. But kind of expanding access and education to the capabilities that are there goes back to what really got me interested in working within communities. And it was one of my first mentors in my first job out of college. It was a regional watershed management group, and we were putting a multi-state watershed management plan together. And my mentor, she was able to have conversations with all of these different people in different roles, but able to relate how important it was to them. So whether this is legislators, business people, conservation groups, general public. And then a map was a tool that everybody was able to look at and see and understand a little bit better and see how it had the impact to them. So that's kind of the connection. It's something that everybody can relate to and can put themselves in that space.
Great, thank you. Were you running a timer? That was exactly 2 minutes.
I was.
That's funny.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for this round. Yeah, we're starting to work on community communicated information to those who don't know what place is about, and then communities creating new information together about their places. And I want to invite people into this next prompt, which is, if you could share for you personally, what's your heartfelt motivation about why you are or have been called to this work, and why it seems to you to be a strategic use of your time, especially regarding the moving through space, annotating space together kinds of things. And with that, I'd like to return back to our top, Emma.
That's funny, good first. The motivation. I tell you what, I looked to Harriet Tubman, who had to use the stars as her map to help free enslaved people in the United States of America. I felt like I was on the same mission. There was a calling, not just for myself to be able to breathe clean air, not just for myself to not choke at night from the emissions that would come into my bedroom, where I was wearing a mask 5 years ago before everybody discovered this whole COVID thing. I was sleeping in a mask in my own bed so that I could keep these chemicals out of my system and get some rest. So I was called to do this work. And I knew that if she could travel back and forth from the South, where people would try to kill her, yet round up people and take them far away and out of harm's way and to a new life, she became my inspiration. And so that is, I kept a picture in my home, in my living room. It was an illustration of Harriet running in the night with the stars above her, because I realized that in order for them to be able to pollute our community like that, and these other 27 facilities were polluting our community, that they would have to dehumanize us. And I connected it to slavery and bringing people from oceans far away, across the ocean rather. You have to disconnect the humanity of that person in order to be able to harm that person. And so my biggest fight was, and this was my realization, is that I had to help people understand we are human. You're in this spot, I'm in this spot. You may be in this wealthy, poor or poor neighborhood, but we're all human. And because you live on more expensive real estate and a different zip code doesn't mean you should have a longer life. And so that was my motivation to not only, like I said, get Emma free of this, but all this suffering and illness and diseases. I had ended up with kidney failure. My sister died on dialysis. My neighbor across the street died on dialysis. My neighbor next to me had kidney failure. So this was something that was just destroying our community because of these facilities. So that is what really my motivation, my heartfelt motivation is, Harriet. And I named our campaign Exodus.
Thank you so much, Emma. I'd like to invite Mookie to go.
So my story is going to some, special time in the world. About 30 years ago, there was something called the Rio Conference or the Earth Conference. And that's where talks about sustainable development came along and other things. And that happened to be the time when I was just starting to learn about geography and kind of going into university from a background in GIS and wanting to do something meaningful, and that's got me interested in environment and society. And within this whole background of Rio, there is this something called Principle 10, which is about public access to environmental information, participation in decision-making, and access to justice, which we just heard about how justice is important within this context. But there was also some notion that it's also about producing information. And the more I went into that, the more it was clear that people should also be able to produce information. And so much of environmental information is in mapping form because of the nature of the problem. But it keeps on going as a fundamental thing that if we want to reach a situation where we can all talk about the environment and understand and share things, exactly what Sean talked in his example, but we know it in many other cases. We have to make it possible for everyone, from people that are completely excluded to groups in remote places, to share the information in a respectful way. So that keep me going and continue to be quite central to how I think that it's also strategic, because otherwise it's information that someone produced by processing some satellite information, and therefore they are telling, you know, some forest community what's going on in their area because that's what the pixel told them on their computer, and that's just wrong. They just don't know about what's going on in the place. So strategically, we do need to do participatory mapping to kind of both ground truth, but also to have different voices about the whole issue.
Thank you, Mookie. And to Jen, please.
Yeah, I guess the essence of the work I do and we do as a team is solidarity technology. But maybe I'll start with the first bit, the solidarity. So maybe about 12 years ago, I knew about pine beetles and glaciers melting and the ozone. We live it. I felt really quite helpless in it, and then I saw a documentary called Under Rich Earth, which showed a story of a community in Ecuador, which is my home country, my homeland. Called Junin, which was facing militia attacks funded by Canadian mining companies. And as someone who benefits directly from, Canadian investors and pension and everything that's tied into healthcare and benefits in Canada is tied to oil and extraction around the world, I was disgusted. I didn't know what to do. I felt very, very like I needed to do something, and I knew I couldn't help or support folks back home because I didn't have any close ties. But at that moment, I decided that, those Quechua resistors who had been organizing, that there were Indigenous folks in Canada who were also resisting tar sands and the LNG and all of the things that happen up here that people don't really know about. And so I started to do that kind of solidarity work. And, for the last 10 years has been a lot of education for myself personally through them. But what was amazing is seeing the parallels and the similarities between Indigenous communities in Canada, Indigenous communities in South America, and how colonization really has these really particular ways of tackling disempowering, disenfranchising, and really committing genocide in a vast way. And so what's been amazing is hearing from different Indigenous communities who've shared this knowledge that, their understanding of the land and their relationship with the land is so deep and so much more interconnected than what the kind of Western perspective is on land, which kind of draws lines and parcels things out. And that I guess that's one of the great things is we're working on technology that helps communities be able to tell those stories about their land, to name and identify things and to control that information for themselves, and really puts everything about mapping on its head. So yeah.
Thank you, Jen. And I'd like to invite Mo.
Yeah, so this is such a big question, but I'm going to keep it specific for this project, Mapping Greens. And really it's picking up on what some of the rest of you have said about agency and giving people agency over their environments. So in in the UK, a lot of the green space in the public realm is privatized, over 90%. And that becomes even more exaggerated in cities where there's very, very limited green space in the public realm. And Emma has mentioned environmental racism, and the access for working class and people of color is just, even much more reduced. So yeah, I worked with young people in this project. And if you think about young people as a group, we've seen how much young people care about climate justice and the environmental movement over the past few years. But these are people who may not have the purse power. If they're under 16, they're not ones voting. They don't necessarily choose their transport, or they're reliant on foods provided by their carers. So it can be really frustrating because people feel like the weight of these issues are so huge and you have very limited agency to do something about them. So this is where community science and creating these maps with young people's, I could really see and feel, and I experienced it myself, you know, the feeling of contributing to evidence-based research and presenting that to the City Council Planning Authority was really empowering. And, you know, these young people are the future generation. So it's really, really important for them to have a say in the future of these cities and spaces and places.
Thank you, Mo. And I'd like to invite Sean.
Yeah, that's everybody's contributions and what was just shared there. I could easily just say what they said, right? Because it's so connected through all of the different points. You know, the statement that Mookie said, allowing people to contribute and understand what's going on in their place, right? So examples of that from community-based planning in watershed groups, through working with different agencies in disaster response, right? With the work that's going on right now in the recovery post volcano eruption in La Soufrière, right? So how are people able to contribute and share information about air quality and ash that's being dropped on them after the volcano eruption? And then the other, as Mo put it, you know, it's working with the young people. One of the things that I've really enjoyed, and with a technical background, is dropping the barrier from access to technology. One of my favorite things that I've done while working with Public Lab was working in one of the maker spaces in Philadelphia to teach groups how to create small computer-based camera sensors to fly under a balloon, so they can go out and capture their own imagery and be able to contribute to the map. As Jen said, you know, it's not just the lines as you're seeing them as they're drawn. You can change the lines by your real world examples and seeing what's there on the ground. So strategy wise is, how do you enable these groups from so many different populations, whether it be inner city, refugee, people trying to make it post-disaster? How can they contribute to support the decision-making in moving forward? Is why I think it's very strategic to democratize the access to mapping capabilities and the ease of sharing that information out and putting it in front of the decision makers. That's why I feel it's real strategic.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone, for this round. The next two prompts are hoping to hear more tactical and practical, like literal things you literally did. So the first one here that we're going to start is, you know, could you share any insights you have on technically having success in I'm going to try my phrase again, participatory spatial notation. In this way, we can include the rolling tours that Emma led in Detroit to the digital global technologies of Sean and Jen and Mookie. So yeah, technically, like if you're organizing people to move through space together, technically, if you are trying to, you know, help people all add data to the same map or simply have a conversation around a map, share something that you technically do to make that work. And I'd like to invite Emma to respond.
Well, one of the things I realized when I started organizing, and this was even before I started organizing, was when you look at the pollution and you live in it, it just boggles the mind because it's such a horrific situation. So I started photographing it. And I would take photographs to meetings and things. And I was at a church one night and the pastor said, have you ever thought about having an art exhibit? Not art, but just exhibit all these photographs together. And we did so at his church. And it just opened up the world to me because I developed a traveling show called Picturing Pollution. And I would go to churches and meetings and universities where people could see firsthand the interaction, what the plumes look like, what the people look like. What is this nightmare that I live in that you don't see because you're not near it? And then from that evolved into taking people on actual tours. So, and Will was very good at feeding. I had different people feeding and then contacting me to do these tours, pollution tours. I would take a van load of people around to facilities, the major facilities like the waste treatment, the refinery, the tar sands oil refinery in my community, and show them this is how we live. I mean, most of the people were just, it was kind of crazy because they would be so shocked and depressed. But it was nothing I could do about it. I'm like, this is truly our reality. This is how we live. And then oftentimes before the tour ended, someone was sick because it overpowered their system. Even if you didn't get off the truck, even if we didn't step outside, just to drive around this loop, they would be queasy. I had Winona LaDuke visited my home. She heard me speak. She said, I want to see what it looks like. And her son was with her that day and he became ill, overwhelmed, just standing outside because they live on a reservation. They're not used to horrible air. But we had connected the dots between the tar sands there, the indigenous people pipelines, and the refinery. All of this comes together on one map, boom, 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 and it's impacting all of us. So we started organizing together around that. But these tours, I would have major shareholders come on the tour, students, church people, just a wide variety. And a lot of these people had a lot of could really impact the way things were happening out there. So I found that tool to just be an amazing way to bring people together around the organizing.
Great. And I hope to hear you pick up on that in the next round of questions. Thank you, Emma. I'd like to invite Mookie.
So on the technical side of the work that I've been involved in, we've been involved in creating online maps that is now community maps of Mapping for Change, and also a tool that is suitable for users without literacy, which is called Sapely, and that support a pictorial data collection that is done in collaborative way. Now, in terms of the technicalities, in all these cases, the central thing is what I now sometimes call mutual co-option. So both sides that are coming into it are co-opting each other. We kind of say want to learn about how to improve our technologies, but we need to listen and to think what the community is going to get from the process. It can call benefit sharing, but it's not benefit sharing because that assumes that only one side have the gift to give to the other side some benefit. It's actually to really listen and to co-opt each other into the process. Another things that I learned and we learn over the years is that you use this kind of early workshops or simple, very simple tool, paper maps and other things, in order to start with collecting some information, because you need to find this balance between open maps that allow people to raise their concern and issues, and completely empty space that actually can cause people to freeze because they haven't reached yet an agreement on exactly what it is that they want to map and things like that. So the early stages are really important to be a facilitation where you kind of discuss what are the issues and what is the purpose of the mapping and what will happen with it. When we're working with indigenous groups now with the use of Sapele, we're very, very careful with that because of the power imbalances that are integrated into that. So there is a whole process of free and prior informed consent and a community protocol and recording in, and it's a bit more ritualistic and structured, but it's still following very similar principles of being very careful, listening, ensuring that the whole process is starting on the right way, and also to keep it a lot of time fairly short. So for many communities, kind of the whole process supposed to be for 6 to 8, because another very important thing that people that are coming with a lot of interest in mapping are forgetting that people have other problems in their life. They have other things, you know, where they get food, where they get jobs, where they get other things. And you need to kind of consider, of course, you can support if you're coming from research background, you need to consider how you share the resources that you capture, i.e. money, with communities. But beyond that, you also need to remember that people have other concerns and you need to structure the whole process into something that got kind of a closure.
Great. Thank you for that, Muki. And inviting Jen.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, that was perfect groundwork for me here. So before I joined the team, Digital Democracy was also doing paper maps and these participatory mapping processes, everything that Muki said, absolutely. Yeah, and also drones, learning how to use GPS devices, camera traps, and all kinds of existing hardware and existing open source software that could be used by communities to do whatever, whether it's territory mapping or environmental monitoring or other kinds of land-based information gathering could use. But the context of the Amazon and the realities of the workload, like we said, Muki, you have to spend half of your week tending to food gathering and supporting your family. So going to a city to learn ArcGIS is not realistic. Getting access to a platform that is only web-based or server-based isn't useful. And so that's why we started building Mapeo. It started about 7 years ago with a desktop platform with territory mapping. And so that's a decentralized tool software that allows for points, lines, and polygons to be drawn in a really simple interface. Using the backend has a bit of OSM in it. And so there's a lot of easy to use aspects of the tech, but also we integrated it with a really specific offline functionality. And in addition to that, was making sure that the data was always locally placed. So it was never outside, it was never belonging to an institute, never belonged to the government, it wasn't in an offsite server. The data was where it was being created. It was in the hands of the community, and the community members and community mappers were the owners and authors of their own information, and they decided what or when to share anything at all. And there's a great story, but I'll wait for the next question for that. But yeah, that's kind of what we're working on.
Great, can't wait for the next round. I'd love to invite Mo in.
Yeah, so I guess I would just continue on from Jen and saying involving the community that you're working with in the entire research process. Again, coming back to agency, so giving the people that you're working with agency in the research process from the beginning. And to do that for me in Mapping Greenness, it was about the project partners. So having access to working with a school and a creative science education charity meant that I had all of these groups of young people, as well as young people marginalized in STEM in various different ways and different communities, So partnering with them was really important in being able to work with these young people in a continued and sort of strategic way. So yeah, getting them to build camera rigs and just conducting the whole sort of iteration and experimentation process with them. I'd also say that collaborating is just, probably one of the most important things that we did with different arts organizations and things like that. But again, I think I'm going to talk about more in the next question.
Great, thanks. And to Sean.
Yeah, again, it's what everyone else said, right? I think that the core to success is understanding the full scope of what's going on within the space, right? Understanding the problems, understanding the community, all of the different interests that are compounded in that area. As Jen said as well, aligning the right technology to solve the problem that's there. Organizations may not have certain capabilities within the within them to support complex things where certain technologies may align better. There may be data sovereignty concerns that exist. So that's something that has to be brought into the decision-making process when bringing technology solutions to it. And another is understanding what technology those organizations are using as well. If they are using a certain stack of technologies, align solutions to support those versus bringing in additional burden upon them of learning how to use, manage, or maintain technology in support of what they're doing. So aligning the right technology to solve the problem. And then the one thing that I've found that leads to the best success in technical mapping projects or initiatives is removing the technical jargon when you're talking to the decision makers or trying to present your information that's there. Emma brought up a great point, is the people that you were working with, you understood who that group of people were and were able to speak to them in what you thought was going to be important. In a lot of organizations that I've worked with, if I were to go in and start talking about APIs or SDKs or all of these kind of like technical bits and bytes, you'd see them grab their phone and start checking their email almost immediately. Right. So it's understanding that audience and remove the technical jargon to make it approachable to them so that they can understand what you're trying to convey and all of the hard work that you and your community have done and are bringing forward.
Thank you for articulating that position of expertise in the community and not with the decision makers. How about that for a technical divide? So, wow, thank you everyone for this round. And many people referenced they were excited about this upcoming prompt, which is please share an insight into your tactics for organizing, like to advocate based on this data. And here, I'd be interested to hear how is community organizing different, where the invitation is to move through space together, where the invitation is to look more closely at our environmental realities together, where the invitation is to combine what we already know about our environments together into a document, where the invitation is then to use that compiled, richer, fuller version of reality to make some political moves with. What is it that's different about organizing in this context? And I'd like to go back to the top of our round with Emma.
Yeah. Organizing. I was called a lone wolf at first because I was out there by myself as an activist saying, we have all of these problems. But then I became an organizer of my community and with my community, working with neighbors, very closely with my neighbors. Those were the key people. There were people beyond that reach, but I had my neighbors so they could understand, we could understand what was happening to us and what were we going to do about it, and what are some of the tactics we could use. And that's when, as an organizer, we had to develop a strategic plan. No plan? How are you in it? How do you ever benchmark? How do you know if you're making any progress? Where are you? So we actually sat down and developed a process based on what we knew. We knew who our target was, the person or people that could give us the yes. We knew what some of the weaknesses were within that organization. And we just had to really map out all of this, just sit down and really go through what it is, who can give it to us, and what pressures. How do the elected officials come in? How does the Congress? How does everything become a part of this strategy? And a lot of it was also based on the civil rights movement, where escalation was very important in the civil rights movement. They didn't just go out and put Rosa on a bus. There were many things before they got to Rosa on the bus. Or they didn't just go and say, we're going to sit at a lunch counter. They made sure they went to the most racist town and area to do it so that they could get a really big news coverage on it. They chose places where they knew they could draw people in. And so that, again, I got to go back to my camera. If you look at me over the years, you're going to see a camera strapped across me because I kept photographing the pollution and things going on in my community, so that when the refinery said this didn't happen, I would give the press the pictures and just like show them it really did happen. And it got to a point where my neighbors would call me, Emma, go look outside now, or go drive over there. So everybody would call me, although I had to go and hail all this crap, but it worked as a system where neighbors would come by, or anybody in the community. If there was a situation, something oozing out the ground, or he'd call me and I would document it. So we document it and then upload it on the web. One time I put some fish that looked like they were dying. It went viral. I got like about 400,000 views. So I'm just saying that tactic of documenting and having a strategy and then documenting and knowing, and within that strategy gets you to where you want to go.
Thank you so much, Emma. And to Mookie.
Yeah, so it's fascinating to be after Emma because I'm exactly in an opposite situation. So I'm sitting inside the university with all the kind of aspect that on one side I know that I'm actually holding a lot of power because it's something that comes from UCL or coming from a major research university. But at the same time, the kind of within scientific circle, even within people that are doing community action research, which is what I've been doing, you're not supposed to be an activist. You can do that in your free time. You're not supposed to do that as part of the job. Science is supposed to be disinterested, objective, all these other things that we got in our head. So what you need, and that's where it gets back into what I mentioned earlier about the co-option. You know that the community will use it, you guide them, where it is, you kind of consider what will be the information that will really make a difference. So when you're considering, say, air quality, you think about the same instrument that the local authority is using, so they have a stand. And then they can say, hey, we've done that together with UCL. Those people know what they are doing, so they can use it. And it's or in another case, one of their works where we've done noise monitoring around Heathrow. We raise money from within UCL to be able to employ community scientists. The community scientists happen to be from the local organization that fight the expansion of Heathrow. So they can do it with the information that they collected, but we are kind of threading this delicate line of supporting and facilitating and assisting the whole participatory mapping activity while passing the activism part about the change-making part and the organizing part to the community. And actually that sort of mutual ability of understanding where our power comes from. It is coming indeed from the general perception that we are objectives and disinterested, and the community can do their own work. So that's been a tactic that is used. And actually, when you analyze different cases, even the case of, Detroit and Virginia Tech, in the parts where it worked well, you can see that that model is actually working or can work well. We're doing that a bit more consciously and knowingly than in other cases.
Great. Thank you, Mookie. And to Jen, please.
Yeah. How do I transition? I mean, I think, or somewhere in the middle. So digital democracy has been focusing on technical accompaniment and kind of solving some problems, and now it's gone into this software development. So one of the biggest things has been deep, close collaboration with groups that want to be part of the work. So I'm going to share my screen. Pardon the black bars on the top and bottom there. So these are examples of some of the communities that we work with primarily. These ones are in Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. And just a big nod to Emma here on the Toxi Tour stuff. This photo here is of a Toxi Tour that I joined in Ecuador, and in the bottom corner, you can see there's like 4 different indigenous nations in Ecuador that were doing a Toxi Tour of palm oil and oil spills in the Amazon as a way to organize. And so we got to sit and watch and learn from them. And at the same time, we're gathering information about what are the realities that we have to consider, what are their needs that we have to consider as an organization that's responsible for designing the software and recommending the hardware and the training that is suitable for these communities. And there's quite a number of them. So lots of diversity across geographies. This is only in South America. There's other projects elsewhere in the world, but the geographies are different, the realities are different, connectivity, culture, relationship to land is all different. So one of the things that is really key from Mapeo is that it's very much a black box tool, which has like an out of a box kind of basic categories, courtesy of OpenStreetMaps. But there is, for if there's technical access, a lot of customizable content that can be done. So for example, the Guarani, so they're one of the nations that are part of Alianza Sebo in Ecuador. They started doing a territory mapping project, maybe started about 7 years ago, I think. About the same time as Mapeo, because that's actually why Mapeo was built, is to help facilitate this territory mapping. And so strategically, they were wanting to document some community resources, and just generally, they were trying to contest this image of an empty green space on a map, meaning open fodder for any company that was willing to bid based on what the government decided was the value of their territory, even though it had already been defined as official Guarani territory. And so they started doing this territory mapping and using Mapeo desktop and actually being the most close collaborators in the first years to help develop the desktop platform and all the UX and everything involved. And as they're creating the data, the oil blocks come drawn over everything, and auctions start happening, and hypothetically consultations had happened, but they were quite manipulative. Giving Coca-Cola and crayons to kids and then saying that their job was done as a community consultation. So when the oil blocks were auctioned, Alianza Sebo with the Guarani had basically filed suit against the Ecuadorian government, saying that it was improper consultation, and that they know that because if they had been properly consulted, they would have shown the territory maps and indicated the usage and what was okay and not okay to enter. And so they basically, using their territory maps that they had already been, they had already started. It wasn't the point of maps, but it was one of the benefits, is that they could use some of the map data, excluding some of their sacred data, of course. And they brought it to that case, and they presented, and that was one of the key bits of evidence on top of other testimonies to actually contest and break that the sale of those blocks. So they physically use their territory mapping to stop oil blocks and stop extraction in their territory, and it's a huge win. And for us, it's a huge honor to be a small part of that. And just that's what we continue to do, and hopefully we try to share that information from that project. But again, also many others. We've launched this project called the Earth Defenders Toolkit, where we're trying to consolidate all the different tools that are available and invite different communities to share what they've learned. And that's just one of the pieces. You know, we're not really the experts, we're the connective pieces, and that's what we're trying to do right now.
Awesome. Awesome.
Great, thank you, Jen. And to Mo.
Yeah, so I can relate to Emma in that I was just a sort of independent member of the community and not affiliated to any organization. And when I started doing these mapping workshops, I didn't really consider it as community organizing. And it was only later when I was invited to present it to the City Council Planning Authority. And then that allowed me to facilitate a sort of youth group on the Vision 2050 for the city, that I sort of realized that it was community organizing and had to think a bit more strategically about it. So yeah, in terms of tactics, for me, it's about being as broad in the collaborations and who you're collaborating with as possible. So I mentioned that I worked with a school and an education charity, but then also worked with an art gallery to get Arts Council funding and host an exhibition of the work. Just this month, it's going to be exhibiting in Berlin in September. Then we got the Nottingham Good Food Partnership, who are all about urban farming, in on it. There were architecture students who created, they used the aerial photographs and the maps in their projects around urban greening of the city. And one of those won a RIBA Sustainability Prize. So it was just all of these different things. I also presented it at a few scientific conferences and citizen science conferences, and getting as many different sectors and people to, be involved with it. I think if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been invited to present at the City Council Planning Authority. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was that collaborative and sort of multidisciplinary like design of the project enabled that to become a community organizing project. And the other thing is about collaborating with other movements. So there was a big movement in Nottingham to create a people's forest. And then there's a huge site now which has just been knocked down. It was a shopping centre that went bankrupt in COVID, and it's owned by the council. So there's now a big grassroots movement among a lot of groups in Nottingham to turn this into a sort of green quarter. And I'll hopefully be doing a mapping there soon to inspire some new sort of future designs around it. So yeah, that's mine.
Thank you, Mo. And to Sean. Yeah.
So again, what everyone else said. No, but the deep collaboration is my biggest tactic. It's understanding everybody in the process and having the conversations with them. An example is work we did with a Syrian refugee camp in Syria. We were able to have conversations with everybody from a deputy high commissioner in the UN High Commissioners for Refugees down to actual residents and representatives at every level, whether it's through camp planning, camp design, camp implementation, camp management, and camp resident. And understanding what each of those populations or groups needed. So it's having that deep collaboration. The second point is understanding your role in that as well. Coming from a technical aspect, don't come in with a solution looking for the problem. Understand the problem and then align a solution to it. So making sure that it's able to be used by all of the different levels that's there. And then my final tactic, one of my colleagues called my inner toddler. And I ask why a lot. So when you're having the conversations with people, you ask why. Why is it going on this way? Why are you doing it this way? Because often the first answer isn't the real problem. But as you go in and really start to kind of build out that understanding with it, it's just kind of making the conversation longer and really building that solid understanding of what's there, and then bringing technology into the conversation. Technology is an enabler to solve the problems, in my opinion. The goal is to create something that's going to improve the current situation. So understand the role that you're coming in, or in my case, in the majority of my interactions, I'm coming in to kind of help support and resolve help mitigate an issue or make things, improve things that's there. That's my role in it, but build that understanding and make sure everybody understands this is where we're headed to with it.
Great. What a round, everyone. And we have reached the top of the hour, which is great. This has been really inspiring. And we have one last question, and I want to already begin to open it up for people to either respond to the prompt, which is, which of the many lessons you've learned along the way do you feel that the fewest other people have ever heard of or would possibly be able to know about without putting in like the decade of work that you each have, the decade plus, sorry.
Would you ask that question?
Yeah, so either,
Would you ask that question?
Yeah, share one of your lessons learned and maybe not one of the most obvious ones. Or if you feel like you have conveyed, maybe you've already conveyed something, feel free to ask one of the other speakers or ask a general question, and we'll just start free forming for the next few minutes. Yeah, so you could go either way. Emma, are you interested in going?
Yeah, well, lesson I learned, and maybe people don't know about it, is that in terms of what I was doing, I had to make love be the foundation of my organizing, because I was up against a huge corporation, but there were also individuals or people you would think one way, and they weren't thinking like that. That could be very upsetting or make me sad or very disappointed or angry. I could walk around with anger, like, why is this like this? And so I realized that if I walked around with a bunch of anger and contempt in my heart and my spirit, that was going to block my creativity. I have to be creative. And so I can't have that negativity in a space that's blocking a space that should be doing critical thinking and everything else. So I walked around with a lot of forgiveness in my heart, and I learned to set aside those things or those people or those issues that were actually trying to block 400 homeowners from leaving a space that would give them a new chance at life and maybe elongate their lives and make their lives better. So that, and it was biblical for me. That is why the whole campaign was named Exodus. I was going right back to the Bible when the oceans had, the water had to part and all of that. This was that same Exodus. And my faith became the foundation of what I was doing. And even our very first organized protest at Marathon, we went over there and had a prayer vigil. And it was about Exodus, speaking to a higher power, whomever that might be for you. to come in as an intercessor and connect us with this entity that stands to be of detriment to us. So that is something that I don't know that people know, but that's what kept me going.
Thank you, Emma. And to Mookie.
So the lesson that I have, and I'm noticing how many times it is ignored, is that the answer is not an app, which is the answer is not technology. Too many times, also in the area where I'm currently active very much in, citizen science, you hear the idea that if they'll create an app or use a technology or create a website with mapping, that will open up and empower people. Empowering people is go down, go to where they are, figure out what they are doing, what technologies they are using, what they're understanding, and then structure it from there. And that, for me, one of the biggest lessons, and also why a lot of time it's very low-tech solutions that are the answer that very much fit within public lab. It won't be big news, but actually, if you want something that a lot of people got, think about what will run on cheap mobile phone that got its full data capacity used, not something that you have.
Thank you, Mookie. I love this question. Okay, Jen.
Yes, Nikki, we should be friends. I think I agree with everything you say all the time. Yeah, I think the biggest lesson is that the relationship, people's land, like we have a relationship with it. Everyone has a relationship with it, whether they're willing to admit it or not. And it is, in essence, it is very intimate, especially when a community has a close and real concrete relationship, spiritual or and all the layers of relationships that we have with land, with food, with everything that nourishes and feeds us and hosts us. It is really intimate. And the way that we share information about it or give access to people with it, like it's just like it's our bodies. Land is our body. We each as different individuals, maybe as a part of different cultures, have different ways of handling that information, different ways of handling access or exposure or treatment, and or how we push it, or maybe what are the sacrifices we're willing to make to confront a challenge. Those are all going to be very unique to every single community and every single individual. And so there is no one way, there is no right thing out of the box. All we have is to think about, like know what you know in your territory, or know what find out from the people who you're working with, where they stand and how they handle these hard questions. And then from there, work on finding the solutions that make sense and that are suitable and culturally appropriate for that context.
Thank you so much, Jen. And to Mo.
Yeah, I'm just so in awe of everyone's work. I would say that lessons learned, and especially since this video is for people who are starting for mapping, for organizing and sort of just getting started, is that, yeah, you don't have to be affiliated with an organization to do this work. And that's what Public Lab is here to do, is for any citizen who feels motivated by a cause to get going on it. So yeah, I'll just say that even if you're just one person, that's enough.
Thanks, Mo. And to Sean.
Yeah, so I guess the lesson that I've learned is it's rarely ever a technology issue. There's a ton of technology that's out there. It's more often a people problem that is encountered. It's understanding all of the things that are there, instead of just kind of trying to be very quick to put a solution to understand it. It's really build your understanding of what's going on, is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned in the work, because it's so easy to just put a piece of technology in front of somebody, but it's much harder, you know, Jen, to mimic your point. I want to be friends with you, because I really appreciate the way that you were saying it. It's understanding who the users are going to be of that technology, and if you come in with something that's inappropriate for that community, it's not going to be used. You're not going to be able to get the data to build out the information and understanding to make a difference on it. So it's really not the technology, it's understanding the people that's there. That's the biggest thing that I've learned.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you, everyone, so much for these lessons learned. I think we could share these a little more widely. They're really powerful and punchy. And thank you for starting the friendship train. Yes, that was one of my secret goals, is that we're all really deep into this work. And by having an event that just with us, maybe we could make a little bit of cross connection here. So I'll definitely be supporting these developing friendships as much as I can. And
I'll give a shout for the International Society of Participatory Mapping.
Please do, because even I don't know what that is.
Yep, I'll put in the link, because there is now actually organization that bring together people in participatory mapping. So let me link you.
What a setup, Mookie. Just set him up and knock him down. Thank you.
It's the International Society of Participatory Mapping.
Yeah, here. Yeah, and the power of this of maps is legal documents tied to land reform in a way that citizen science is only aspirationally, you know, getting these kind of legal and regulatory victories so far. So, yeah, roots in mapping, roots in land, everybody. We have a few minutes to just popcorn any questions we might have for each other, like, hey, whoa, you said that thing about this. I'd love to hear more about that. Does anyone have a question for anyone else, or a general question?
But I just wanted to comment about the Ecuador, that whole, oh my, that was amazing. That's some amazing work. And I'm just so happy for them that they were able to protect the land, you know, and like you said, their body. Yeah, that was amazing, awesome, just awesome.
Thank you for starting the appreciation round. Appreciation is also welcome.
Yeah. And I've got a follow-up question to Emma. So Emma, it's kind of what happened when people move? Is there a plan to kind of keep some sense of community, or it's everyone moving to wherever?
That's a very good question, because you kind of wish you could. I come from a generational community. My parents lived in the home that I own, and everyone, we all know each other, right? So if I could have had my wish, that we would have just picked up all the houses and took us all together and put us in another spot. So it's a double-edged sword. You want to get away from all of these emissions of pollution, but it is heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. We owned our home over 60 years. It is heartbreaking to break up your community. That hurts. And so what's going to happen, though, is the land, because we are surrounded by 27 facilities, it is a poisoned place. Everything there is just poisoned. Even right around the corner from my house was a 5-acre lead contaminated field that was fenced off by the US government. So they're going to purchase the homes and tear them down and make a green space and plant more trees and things to and plants to make the air better and to sort of be a barrier, if you will. to absorb in some of the things going on around there. But the community will become a green space. It will not be homes. They made a commitment not to expand into it, but to just make it, some people call that dispossession. You lose where you are. So yeah, it hurts, but the alternative of just staying there, there's nothing could fix that. There was nothing that could fix it.
Can I just ask as well, where is the new location that people will move to? Is it far from where you were?
Oh, well, what it is, it's a homeowner buyout plan. So they will offer you money for your house, right? And then moving expenses. And so it's up to you, it's up to me to decide where I want to live after that. So people will disperse. I decided to come here to Memphis because my family is here. My daughter just recently married. I wanted to be closer to a lot of my relatives here. So that's how it will be. People are gonna just move away. It's gonna be, that's what has already transpired over where the whites lived. If you go over there now, you see a lot of ducks and birds and animals, and it's like it's just green and trees, and a lot of animals have come back, and it's kind of actually serene looking. But again, they cried when they left. It hurt because they had been, like us, very close, a very close-knit community. But that's what's going to become of it. You can push a community to the point. It's like the Love Canal. You can't, it was a place here that was so polluted and contaminated that the only thing you could do is not oil extraction, but human extraction. You got to move the people away from it. And that is the situation that's occurred with us.
Wow, that's a really powerful line, human extraction.
Yeah, Emma, I think that story is, I'm glad that everyone is able to move to somewhere that is safer and healthier. But I think this continent is marked with empty lots and empty parks that represent displacement from especially Black folks, Indigenous folks, and other migrant populations throughout the whole history of folks landing here. And, I would encourage, whether it's a physical monument or a digital monument, to have that story be part of that landscape. So when people visit there, they can hit a QR code and actually find out there were people there. And it's really important to share that story because it's really powerful, and it is a testament to the kind of care and love that exists in like where you live.
Well, with the Indigenous, speaking of Indigenous people, because as you know, the Alberta tar sands, but then that comes to Port Huron, where there is a large Indigenous population there, sizable. I started organizing with them. And this is the thing. They were saying that we cannot leave our land, that we can't leave culturally. So just think about that. And they were in an area called Cancer Alley. It's just so many contaminants wrapped around them there. And I was thinking, wow, just think about that. So all they try to do is monitor everything, but the community is sick. It's already infected. The male population, they have fewer males there. And I was like, wow, how could this be? We're leaving reluctantly, we don't want to leave, but you can't leave and you have to stay in that. So what is to become? How do you fix that? Right. Can't leave.
Thank you. That comment deserved a moment. Would anyone like to offer anything else by way of closing?
I just want people to realize if something's going on, you have the power. You have the power to make change. Don't, people thought I was crazy, really, when I said, we have to get out of here and we are going to go up against this. I mean, they're the #1 domestic oil producer in the United States now. And they're like, you can't get anything done with that corporation. And people, you know what? If we live like this, we're going to be destroyed. Everything will be destroyed. We have to stand up. We have to find each other. We have to support each other. We have to keep working at it, and we cannot give up. You can't give up to that. And that's the only thing I would say. If it's bothering you, let it bother you enough that you start fighting it and fight it. Someone asked me in a piece they were doing for a news station, how long are you willing to fight for this? I said, until I take my last breath, because they're killing me anyway. That's how long I fight. There is no end to this. There's no end to destroying our people, destroying our air, destroying our land. And really, I will be so glad when this whole era of fossil fuels and all of this is put to rest. And we get a very serious healing for everything, for all of us.
Thank you, Emma. And thank you to all the panelists, really from the bottom of my heart. Contact information for each panelist will be included as part of where this video is uploaded. And for everyone else watching, we hope to see you soon at another publiclab.org event. Have a great day. Thank you.